Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Greeting friends, and welcome to today's episode. I am your host, Kelsey Hipkin, and today we're going to talk about something really important to the safety of Alberta's highways and beyond, distracted driving. Since January, AMTA has been behind the wheel of a distracted driving campaign. As well as sharing stats and messaging on our social media, we're inviting you to take a stand against distracted driving by joining us in taking the pledge to make our highways safer. The numbers are clear. Distracted driving is an epidemic, and we face its risks every time we get behind the wheel. It's time to come together and protect what matters most, our loved ones, our communities, and our province. We can make every drive safer by not reading between the lines. By taking a pledge against distracted driving, you're joining a community that is committed to safety and positive change. We're going to include the details to submit your pledge in our show notes, and we'd love to hear from you, whether you write down a few words or gather some of your colleagues and take a pledge in a video. As for some of those numbers I mentioned, in 2021, Canada's National Collision Database noted distracted driving as the cause of 22.5% of fatal collisions. Also in 2021, the Canadian Automobile Association noted 47% of Canadians admitted they typed out or used the voice memo feature to send a message while driving. For a more in-depth look at distracted driving, we welcome today's guests, Constable Kendrick, Edmonton Police Service, as well as AMTA Senior Advisor at Member Solutions, Doug Walton. Doug, welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Kelsey.
Thanks for coming, guys. And to start, let's do a quick get to know you. James, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Kelsey. Thanks for that. I've been a member with Edmonton Police Service for 17 years, with over 6 years of experience in traffic enforcement and commercial vehicle investigation unit, which is where I currently serve. I have a deep passion for driving, have been fortunate to be part of two organizations called Blue Line Racing and Edmonton 50 Motorsports. Each organization collaborates with communities across Canada and the United States to promote traffic safety and responsible driving. Additionally, as a parent of 4 children who have recently started driving, road safety has become a major topic in my family and our discussions.
Wow, 4 kids, all with a license. That is kudos to you for that. Doug, it's your turn. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure will, Kelsey. Thanks. Doug Walton, Senior Advisor of our Member Solutions team here at the Alberta Motor Transport Association. I have been in the industry for coming up 28 years. Recently joined the AMTA about 8 months ago from industry as a senior operations manager for one of our nationwide companies. And look forward to the discussion here with James and digging right into it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doug and James. For our listeners out there, Doug has been integral to this distracted driving campaign that we've been working on, as has the rest of our committee, including Cliff and Deborah and Emmanuel. Can't forget Emmanuel.
Nope.
You guys, let's roll into this. James, I'm going to start with you. Let's just start at the beginning. What exactly is distracted driving?
That's a good question. So the Traffic Safety Act defines distracted driving as holding, viewing, or manipulating a cellular phone while operating a vehicle. In simple terms, it occurs when a driver's attention is diverted from the road due to other activities, reducing their ability to react and drive safely.
Awesome. Thank you, James. And do you have some examples of distracted driving that you and your fellow officers may have witnessed?
I've got a few, so I'll just give a couple. There was a good one where we had a lady on an iPad, full iPad, right at the steering wheel of her car, manipulating it. And when she was stopped, she admitted to being on a conference call.
Okay, that's definitely a distraction.
Absolutely. I've had myself where I've had a male that was shaving his head with a razor, an electric razor.
Wow.
So it was interesting. Another good one was I had another lady that was doing 70K while putting full makeup on her face, like eye makeup, with no hands on the steering wheel.
Wow. Okay. That is one that I have seen. I have seen the makeup in the car in traffic, pretty popular here in Calgary. So let's work on doing that at home or once you get into the office there, friends. Doug, I'm going to hand it to you for some questions with James.
Thanks, Kelsey. James, great to have you here. And I, again, appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a busy schedule, obviously, in the duties that you have to do every day. But thanks again for being here with us. The statistics that Kelsey shared, earlier are certainly concerning, and AMTA's campaign isn't, the first of its kind. Much like the drunk driving campaigns in the past, there is a growing awareness surrounding this issue. Why do you think that some people continue to engage in distracted driving behaviors while driving, despite knowing the risks?
It's a good question. If I was to say, I personally believe the main reason for the distracted driving while it persists is separation anxiety from our phones. Many people are so dependent on their devices that they feel compelled to respond to calls or messages immediately rather than waiting until they can safely pull over. This addiction to constant connectivity makes it difficult for drivers to ignore notifications, even when it puts their safety and other people's safety at risk.
Yeah, it makes sense. I left my phone at the office here the other day, and overnight I was sitting at home, really not knowing what to do, and thinking, should I go back to the office and get my phone? I'm kind of lost, and it is a true separation anxiety when we every day handle our phones and do a lot of business through them and communication, and when we don't have them, for sure, I can understand that.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the misconceptions people have about using smartphones and driving, such as thinking it's safe, when you pulled up to the stoplight to check your messages and that kind of thing?
That's a common one. And
Yeah.
actually, we get a lot of enforcement that way because we'll be hidden in the bushes or something watching for people sitting at the lights. But the clear, concise answer is you're not allowed to do it. When you're operating a motor vehicle, whether it's stopped at a light or driving, you're not allowed to handle, hold, or view or manipulate your cell phone. That's clear and simple. You can't even hold it. Even if you're not looking at it, you cannot use it. That is the law.
What about like GPS and those kind of things?
That's a good one. So GPS, you're allowed to view the actual route that you're going, but you have to put that into the phone or device that you're using before you leave for your destination, and you cannot manipulate or change it while you're driving. So that's the only thing. In addition to that, the rule is that you have to have it hard mounted if it's, like if cell phone in a cell phone holder, so that you're not grabbing it or manipulating it whatsoever. It cannot be in your hand. It has to be hard mounted, whether it's the actual GPS or your phone.
So that rule is very similar to like ELD, for instance. If you're operating ELD on your cell phone, it has to be in a holder secured to the dash.
That's
hands-free.
That's a fantastic example of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So is there a time where it is accepted for phone use while driving, like emergency cases? Like walk me through.
Absolutely. So, it comes down to discretion, what is able to be proven. But the biggest few that we have, and I have examples here just in front of me on some paper here. A perfect example is escorts. So say you're doing an escort, whether it's a funeral, you're allowed to have a two-way radio. Now, the only time that you're allowed to use your cell phone is if your two-way radio goes down. So it's no longer functioning. And I'll actually read right from the Traffic Safety Act is when two-way radio communication is not functional or is unavailable. So at that point, you can use it to make sure that you're coordinating with your escort party. Another one that is quite common that we see a lot of people have discussions with us on is if you have like a hotshot or a delivery driver needs to keep in communication with his company for the next delivery, it has to be justifiable and reasonable why you would pick that phone up and use it to get a hold of your dispatch. So in reality, you should be still pulling over and getting that information before you're driving, but it have to be some sort of exigent circumstance that allows you to use it in order to justify why you have it in your hand or using it. So in reality, you should be still using a two-way radio, but it has to be, the only way the exemption would fall in is if it wasn't functioning or unavailable. The last one a lot of people get a little panicky about is if it's an emergent situation, yes, you're allowed to use your phone. It's obviously exigent, so you need to make that call to 911. That would be the case. If it's just to make some sort of traffic complaint that's non-emergent, please do not use that at that point, because then you're no longer exempt.
So if I see say a potential, impaired driver, I can pick up my phone, I can make that 911 call, continue following and do the reporting through my cell phone, and I'd be okay.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Got it. So back to, I guess, you mentioned, I know you read the legislation and the laws, do you think the current laws around distracted driving are enough, or do you think there need to be more stringent?
I sat down with another colleague and discussed that today, and I would have to believe that they would need to be more stringent. We're not getting the message right now that it is illegal and it can cause serious damage or death within the highways, depending on what circumstance it's being used for. So right now, the current fine is $300, and it comes with 3 demerits if you're found guilty, so convicted of that offense. Now in Ontario, we see that it could be between $650 to $1,000, with a 3-day suspension as well of your license. So that has that immediate effect right at hand of, hey, I did something wrong.
Well, even with those strict laws, I heard recently, I think Ontario has seen upwards of 80 some odd deaths in 2024, which was, I think, 43% higher than the year before. So it's still painting that picture that we're not getting better, right? We're either staying a course where we shouldn't be on, or we're getting worse. Would you agree?
I would 100% agree. I pulled another statistic just before I came here, and they said 1 out of 4 fatalities in Canada are distracted driving related.
Wow.
And
when you factor in 13, I think we're just shy of 13,000 convictions in Alberta, from those numbers a couple of years ago, that's who are just getting caught, right? How many more are not? And what is that risk, right?
Absolutely. And like you said, that is the conviction. That may not even be the actual number of tickets issued. That's just the conviction rate. So
I'm going to interject if I may. James, you mentioned, I believe it's $300 and 3 demerits in Alberta.
That is correct.
So if I am a repeat offender, is it just I keep getting my ticket until I run out of my demerits and then my license is suspended?
Basically, yes, that is correct, because it is based on convictions. So you could have 5 stacked up, but they may be throughout the year, so it may not be on your record yet. So It may take some time for that to happen. If we're seeing a repeat offense, so say I stopped Doug 3 times in a row, and I know he's not getting the message, then I can give him a mandatory court appearance, and then the justice could seek a higher fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to stand in front of a judge saying, yeah.
I would hope not.
James caught me twice before, and here I am again, right?
Well, and the likelihood would be pretty low, but I mean that would be something if I caught at the same time that many times.
Well, you won't catch me.
I won't.
I've taken the pledge, and my phone stays away.
I'm glad to hear it.
So, I guess over and above that $300 fine and 3 demerits, there's the insurance hikes, right? I don't even think you could afford to drive a vehicle if you got to the 5th distracted driving violation. I'm not sure of the numbers and how that insurance is affected by each of those convictions. I'm not sure if you're aware, but
from the information that I gathered this morning here, potentially your insurance premiums could go up 25% per time.
Wow.
So that's significant. If you looked at just $1,000, that's $250 added onto that.
Yeah. Well, again, that's all money, but really what we're here is to protect lives, right? And your families, my families, and the other road users' families and themselves. So, do you have any examples of or a specific case that was really shocking, like other than the ones you've already mentioned? But
yeah, they all get kind of a little bit shocking because you're quite surprised. One that was kind of funny, I had a neighbor send it to me just recently. It was in Edmonton on YEG Wave. Was a woman that was driving on the Henday with 1 foot, steering the car while eating. So it was an impressive video to see. So that one was fairly shocking. And another one that kind of is more impactful was my supervisor was driving with his daughter on the way home, and he looked over to see a school bus full of kids, and the driver was sat there texting on her phone.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
And he asked his daughter, because she was in the passenger seat, to film it, and he contacted the company after and discussed it with them. So, I mean, it will have ramifications on something of that nature. I get it. It could be your job and your livelihood, but you're also putting all those kids on that bus in danger and everybody else.
Well, that is a crazy story. And, when you think about it, those children on that bus, that's precious cargo. It doesn't get any more precious than those children and human life. And for that driver to be driving distracted like that with those souls on board it is truly unacceptable. And I appreciate you sharing that story with us. Can you, or is it up to the discretion of an officer to raise that charge to a next level? And what would that look like, right? If you saw it be turning into more of a dangerous driving instead of distracted, where would that go?
Absolutely. So there would have to be other elements just then being on the phone to give that indication that this should be elevated to, say, let's even go, say you're on your phone, you ran through a red light. Now I'd be certainly looking at a careless driving ticket opposed to just a distracted driving. I had one where a gentleman was in and out of traffic on the Henday doing 165. When I got beside him, I noticed that he was sitting there texting on his phone. So in an instance like that, I elevated it because he's no longer beyond distracted driving. Now I could have probably gone dangerous driving, but I went with careless driving, which is $547 ticket and 5 demerits. Now, if we go the dangerous driving route, now it's a criminal charge. Now you're fingerprinted, you have a mandatory court appearance, and you have to speak to a judge and say why I was doing what I was doing. With that, the fines can range, and you could potentially serve jail time. You could also get a license suspension or a driving prohibition. An example was the Humboldt crash, where it was no longer just a collision, it was beyond that. Mm-hmm. And they have to look at all the factors in it and lay those charges. And in that case, there was significant charges laid to the driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A very sad moment in time for our industry and for the families.
Absolutely.
So I guess if I was to be texting and I drove through an intersection and I ended up hitting somebody and injuring those folks, and the investigation came back, or even worse, maybe it's a fatality accident, and the investigation, uncovers that I was distracted on my phone or putting makeup on, I guess. What would happen, or what could happen to me beyond, just the tickets and the at fault?
Yeah, so it can go in several different directions. So just going back to, say it was a cell phone, and we didn't have the evidence at the hand, what we'd more than likely do is a production order to get your phone and do a warrant to get into it to see what your call logs were, what you were doing. We could also pull footage from intersection cameras if it was warranted. Mm-hmm. In addition, you could put that whole package together, and now you're facing a lot more jeopardy than just the ticket that you would normally get into for a distracted driving. So that could include, like we talked about, dangerous driving, careless driving, even just a distracted driving ticket. But then your insurance premiums are going to go up. And likelihood, if somebody can find that you were negligent, you could potentially have a civil case against you, right, where somebody goes after your personal assets. And I mean, is that worth it?
At the end of the day, it is not, right?
So that could be your home, that could be your family's belongings that now somebody is trying to go after because of your mistake.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess just to kind of wrap things up, if you had one message to share with our listeners about distracted driving, what would that be?
I wrote this down this morning, and I wanted to make sure that I came across hopefully fairly well when I say this, but the message I would say is don't do it. That's the simple advice I can give, but I'm human, and I understand that life is full of distractions beyond just cell phones. Even a small change in your habits can have an impact on everybody's life. So I urge everyone, please don't drive distracted. Put your phone somewhere out of reach. Use Bluetooth for hands-free calls, and if you must respond to a message, pull over safely. Most importantly, stay focused at the task at hand, driving. Maybe even try to discover the joy of driving and appreciate the true privilege it is.
Yeah, and you nailed it. It's a privilege for sure. And it's funny, you and I were chatting earlier before we started the podcast about our kids, and we were in Jasper this weekend, and just before we left town, Mama took our boy over, and he managed to pass his learner's license. And so we were in Jasper, and he got an opportunity to drive for the first time. But before we did that, we had the distraction discussion, right? The music is off, the phones are away. I gave them the pre-trip talk too, because I'm a trucker, right? So we got to pre-trip our vehicles, make sure everything's safe. But yeah, it is a privilege, and that is something that, as parents, as friends, as neighbors, or whoever, we need to make sure that we're sharing that message that driving is a privilege and distraction is just something that we need to get rid of. For
Absolutely. Sure. And I have to say, Doug, I really appreciate you sharing that story with me, because you light up like you wouldn't believe talking about it. And it's just so nice to see, because I love driving, and obviously so do you. And I just want to embody that into my kids. I want to have more people enjoy driving instead of worrying about the next destination on their phones and the distractions. So hopefully we can make that impact.
Wow. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for sharing the stories and answering my questions. I'll throw it back to you, Kelsey.
I do want to pick your brain for a minute, Doug. Just both you and James did touch on ELDs earlier, but Doug, from your experience as a commercial driver, can you provide some insight just on staying focused on the road?
Yeah, for sure. And this is a discussion I've had with a lot of drivers that I've worked with in the past. And, as we see more and more technology coming into the cab, one of the complaints from the drivers was just too much technology, lots of buzzing and warning lights and things going off, and cameras, inward facing, outward facing. And then on top of that, your ELD is lit up, maybe dispatch is trying to get a hold of you. So it is a big challenge for drivers to stay focused and stay between the lines when, they have all those, background noises going on. So I think just as a professional driver, you need to make sure that you're shutting as much of those distractions off as possible. Yes, there's a job to get done, and we all understand that. But even as a dispatcher, knowing, when you're making that phone call to your driver, you probably know, and with telematics and GPS and geofencing and all that stuff that's out there today, the dispatch, before making those calls to the driver, should check and make sure that, hey, it's safe to call that driver. Or maybe, I'll wait till that driver's stopped before I make that call and say, hey, where are you? What's your update, right? So just, making sure that your handheld devices are locked in your holders where they need to be, and you're obviously following hours of service and managing yourself, and that's going to be something that will benefit the driver for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. We will move into winding down today's episode. I just kind of want to recap the moral of the story here. People is really just don't do it. It's not worth it. Both Doug and James, you've focused on family, and we mentioned like a school bus driver, which just kind of blows my mind. Our kids are out there, and the goal at the end of the day is to get home to them. And we hear that from a lot of our drivers too. So just as James said, just don't do it. We are going to wrap up a bit here. James, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think I touched on it. I do want to thank you for having me here. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to both you and Doug.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know AMTA has been doing a lot of work with EPS lately, so it's really nice to get a chance to add a voice to a name. And Doug, anything that you would like to add?
Thanks, Kelsey. I guess I'll just end by saying thank you again to Constable Kendrick and the Edmonton Police Service for being with us here today and helping, with this campaign message to end distracted driving in Alberta. James shared a number of examples with us of distraction behind the wheel of a passenger vehicle. But as commercial drivers, we are the professionals out there, and we know better. We've had that professional training, and we also have a commercial driver's abstract that we, must rely on to find employment. And if you show up to a recruiting office and you have, a number of distracted driving violations or other behavioral type violations, it may limit your ability to find employment. And, not just from an insurance perspective, but the company just might not see you as a fit. And so that's important just to remember, keep the phone in the holders on the dash. That's where they need to be, your hands on the steering wheel. And there's a number of challenges that commercial drivers face on the road that they need to be in full attention mode and not distracted. So keep that phone away, and it's my plea. And without sounding too preachy, it is what professionals do. right? Lead by example. So thanks again, James, for being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this podcast.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you again so much, both of you. For our listeners, as mentioned, there will be a couple days left to join us in the fight against distracted driving by taking the AMTA pledge. Pledges will be shared on social media, and the video submissions will be edited for YouTube. Full details will be in the show notes below, and let's close with some AMTA news. Registration for the Professional Truck Driving Championships, taking place May 31st in Edmonton, for both competitors and volunteers is currently open. Check out amta.ca for details or email us at events@amta.ca to submit your drivers for their registration. That registration does close on May 23rd. As of the recording of this podcast on March 5th, the trade show for our annual conference is sold out, but registrations and some sponsorships remain. This year, we will see you from April 8th to 10th at the River Cree Resort and Casino in Enoch, Alberta. And finally, if you haven't heard of it yet and have a driver who has gone above and beyond, be sure to nominate them for AMTA's new initiative, Angels of the Highway. Want to know more? Email us at membership@amta.ca. If you have any questions or comments about the Steering Change podcast, please reach out on our Instagram at AMTA_CA or LinkedIn and Facebook at Alberta Motor Transport Association. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag SteeringChange, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.